Okay, so hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. For those who don't know me, my name is Becca and I'm part of the Brooks Enterprise Support Team. So we support Brooks students, staff and recent graduates to give you the entrepreneurial skills you need to start running your own business, become a freelancer, or even just to improve your CV. We host networking events, run full-scale programs, and have many funding opportunities to help make your ideas happen. During this period, we're currently working remotely. However, we have put on a series of events to support you during this time, such as this one today. Every Wednesday, we host our Make Your Ideas Happen webinar. And from next Friday, we're launching our grad series, a special program specifically to celebrate and support the class of 2020. All of our events are free to attend, and you can book them on our Eventbrite page, which I'll just share in the chat a bit later on. But for today, we have a really exciting webinar planned, providing you with all the information and skills that you need to start and scale your own podcast. Please feel free to use the chat feature and the Q&A feature throughout, and we'll do a little Q&A at the end. So get all your questions in so that you don't forget them, and we'll do it all towards the end of the podcast. Oh, podcast? Already in my head.
You can do a podcast as well.
Anyway, without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce to you Ash Borland, the host of the Personal Branding 101 podcast, who will be delivering today's session. Over to you, Ash.
Hello, hello, hello. I've got to bring it now. You're going to have to bear with me on my technical prowess as I try to do a screen share. Hey, everybody, by the way, I'm Ash, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. You know, it's probably Groundhog Day for everyone else. It's like lockdown life. So let me just bring this in. You see my wonderful there, and then I'll click that on and then press go. Can you all see that? Is that all right, Becca? Can you see that? Give me a wave. Cool. Okay, guys. So let me introduce myself. First of all, welcome to, there you go. Oh, look at that. I can put that there. Amazing. You can't even see that, but I just got really excited about what I just can do with this. Oh, amazing. Anyway, so this seminar here, this webinar, what I'm going to do is talk about how you can set up your own podcast. You'll notice I like to use everything with 101. There's a couple of reasons why. We'll talk about that when we get into, it's not that I'm American, it's because of an optimization strategy, which you'll see when we go into it. But in this kind of half an hour webinar, I'm going to talk to you about how you can set up your own podcast from the ground up and kind of some best practices and go from there. Obviously, if you have any questions, please, I will answer them in the end. But I'm also available. You can reach out to me on like LinkedIn or anything like that, because I'm always happy to answer questions with anyone. So without further ado, let me jump in. So about me, who am I? Yes, so my name is Ash Borland and I'm a personal branding coach and I'm a social media consultant. So I work, it's great with the enterprise team here, because what I do is I work, and what you're talking about is because I work with individuals, so entrepreneurs and big businesses, and I help them effectively stand out from the crowd, stand out on social media by becoming authentic. I mean, realistically, you've seen this all the time where people are online and they're awful. The corporate businesses are terrible. So that's what I do. And that's how I ended up becoming a podcaster. So my podcast is the Personal Branding 101 podcast, and it helps people understand how you can do that on a weekly basis. Now, I'm going to talk to you a bit about why I loved podcasting before, and it might resonate with you. But before I dive into how you can do it yourself. So podcasting, not so much podcasting, but podcasts themselves, I fell in love with them about 2-3 years ago when I started listening to a Gary V podcast, which was called the Gary V Audio Experience. And it was daily, every single day, this guy would upload. Now, I am dyslexic. So going to school, could not establish kind of read. I could read, but I couldn't process information in a visual way. I was very struggling with that. However, when I got into podcasting, my whole world opened up. I found that actually I could learn these things, and there was an abundance of just a library of content that I could just binge consume, and it changed my world. So when I started to set up my own business, number one goal was set up a podcast. As I tell that story to a lot of people over the years and stuff, it seems to be that quite a lot of people have a similar story, that podcast allowed them to open their mind to different things that they probably couldn't have experienced because of the way they learn. So that is another reason why podcast is very important going forward. So let me dive in now to talk to you about it. So what is a podcast and how have they risen to popularity? I've got myself some little notes here. So if I keep looking across, that's why, because I'm trying to keep myself on topic. So what is a podcast? Well, a podcast is literally an audio digital file that is available for download or for streaming on a range of apps. So for example, those apps include Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. I mean, there's actually tons of them. But this is where this idea of a podcast came from, is that they're effectively a radio. They're kind of the what's the word, like the middle child of radios, like a radio show and an audio book. And you'll kind of see this as we go through as to why people listen to them. Now, the way they're set up is that they may work in seasons, they may work in episodes, and they usually cover a variety of different topics and niches, and they can get really micro niche. If you actually start looking through some of the podcast apps, you can find some crazy podcasts that you couldn't believe, which is why they relate to such a huge audience. If you look, you can find a Peppa Pig podcast. I promise you, it's out there. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you can find one which is social influence and behavioral economics, which I love that podcast. But it's one of those where there's such a wide variety, which means that they've risen to popularity because they're not as generic as, say, a radio show would be. Whereas it's, you're kind of forced to listen to what it is. If you look at it, they kind of have risen in popularity in the same time that Netflix has. And that's what was kind of, if you actually look at it, people don't realize this, that when you remove the two together, Netflix allowed us to consume the type of content we wanted to consume when we wanted to consume it. Podcasts, definitely a distant cousin to this, but are very much becoming more and more in the forefront because of that similar way in which we consume media. Now, quite a similar format that you'll see a lot of them is that they'll have special guests, they'll have industry experts, and that's another reason why people like to listen to them, why they became why they rose in popularity, was because people wanted to use them for education. But we'll talk about that later on, about formats of podcasts and the type of podcast that you can have. So why do people listen to them? Well, like I said, they replaced radio. Not many people like to listen to the radio as much as they used to. And actually, if you listen to something like Radio 1, they have a podcast. So that just blows my mind. They actually have a podcast with the best bits so that people can consume it, because they are aware that the consumer habits are changing as our lifestyle changes and as younger people become older. It's kind of a weird kind of shift. And so two reasons why they're massively popular, my favorite two, are, first one, they're free. So because they're free, there's no paywall, for example, whereas Audible, which is absolutely brilliant, and I'm a big lover of Audible, but there is always a subscription fee. Whereas with audio, but with podcasts, you can go through, you can surf it, you can find the ones you like, and if you do like them, brilliant. And if you don't like them, doesn't matter. You've only wasted your time. The other thing that's incredible with them, and I'm going to stress this because I'm going to talk a bit about on trend, what's happening, but right now they are unregulated by Ofcom. That is why they are really popular, because they are not regulated the way that TV and radio is. So in other words, bear that in mind. That's a bit of a double-edged sword. What people can say and do whatever the hell they want to do, which is brilliant because we like that. But also bear in mind is that with podcasts, if you look for something, you're going to find massively polarizing views on things. But that is one of the reasons why people love them, is they are unregulated by Ofcom. So why should you jump into podcasts? Realistically, first thing is, the reason why you should is if you are thinking about starting your own business, if you're thinking about side hustle, anything at all, really, you just have a passion project or a hobby or something you love, the podcasting movement is just getting bigger and bigger. So I did a load of research for this seminar, to be fair, looking in, because I'm not a statistics guy. I hate statistics, but I did some statistics looking at it. And they were saying, so America is kind of the main place for podcasting, and yet only 50% of the US population even know what a podcast is, which means it is hugely uncharted territory if you're trying to build your brand and your reputation. Now, someone like myself, for what I do as a job, for example, talking about trying to get brands to be seen on multiple different platforms, you're always trying to look for this underpriced attention, and podcasts are definitely right now at this perfect space where you could launch a podcast, and in where it's kind of going and the path that it's going could mean that you could end up, it could end up being your full-time job if you do it well enough. Do you know what I mean? So it's one of these things that right now is the time. You may have seen, though, I will say, and me and Becca were talking about this on Tuesday, there is a massive increase of lockdown podcasts. One thing I would say, from a little bit of advice with this, nobody wants to hear you talking to your friends about random crap. If you're going to start a podcast, and we'll talk about it later on, there's a massive jump in this lockdown thing where everyone is now doing podcasting, but they're just copying standard formats of interview podcasts with their mates. And realistically, without a niche or a topic, it doesn't really work. But definitely, if you're trying to build a business, I generate pretty much all of my leads from my podcast and LinkedIn. They're my two main lead forms. And I love doing it. So if you're looking at doing that, or you're thinking about doing that, especially if I could have done it, if someone had told me to do it 5 years earlier, I would have done it 5 years earlier. So why podcast listening will continue to grow? So I don't know if any of you have seen this, but this is very on trend. Podcasting, to monetize a podcast right now is very hard. However, literally last week, after we were kind of talking about doing this, last week, one of the biggest podcasts in the world is a podcast called the Joe Rogan Experience. And Joe Rogan signed an exclusive deal with Spotify last week for $100 million to the rights of his podcast. He's the first one who's done this. And with that signing is going to show the popularity is only going to increase. I think, and I've seen this before, because my job is to understand where attention is. We saw this happen about a year ago with the kind of streaming video game world. I have a client who I work with in that space, and this guy called Ninja signed to an exclusive deal with Microsoft, I think, off the top of my head. And the next thing you know, everybody else started happening. So you're probably going to see over the next 6 months to a year, a lot of these big time podcasters starting to get exclusive deals with Apple, Spotify, Google, these big hosts, because just like they did with Amazon, just like they did with Netflix, whatever you see with Netflix with these exclusives, this is what's going to happen with podcasting. So if you jump on the bandwagon now, it's only going to get harder as you go along, but you could potentially build something quite a big traction. Who knows? You could be the next 100 million. I don't know. I hope I am, but I don't think that's going to happen. So let's get started. So how do you actually do it? So how do you start a podcast? Well, there's a couple of different things. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, it's really not as difficult as you think. Like, it's really not. And to start, now, obviously you can make it as complicated as you want to. But what I want to talk to you about is pretty much the basic setup, how you can do it. And the first one we'll talk about is the equipment. So the equipment that you need realistically is either a laptop or a phone. You don't need, you don't need anything else. A laptop or a phone is brilliant for the recording of it. Now, you can, if you want, use a microphone for that. So my microphone, for example, I'm using here is a Blue Yeti. In fact, it's funny enough, I'm about to show you, but it's literally the one on the screen. Now, the Blue Yeti mic is considered kind of the staple mic for a podcaster. That's a USB mic. I'm going to stress this. You don't need to have a mic. So if you're worried about setting up your podcast, but you want to, if you're a student and you're on a budget, just use the voice notes on your phone and just talk. Don't worry too much. But for the basic good setup, one of these mics are brilliant. And realistically, they're about £150 for a mic like that. Now, you can also get, if you don't want to do that, you can get what they call a lav mic. And the lav mic is a small mic that connects. I've literally just put mine in a box down there, otherwise I would have lifted it up. But it's a clip that clips onto the side. So it's like a lapel mic. It clips on the side and it plugs into your phone. They're like 20 quid on Amazon. So that's pretty much all you need. Now, if you are using a Blue Yeti mic, like I say, then headphones are really, really good, purely because it cancels out everything else. You can hear yourself, and it doesn't cause any feedback. But the whole setup itself is not very expensive. So literally just a microphone and a recording thing. So a laptop. Now, software, how do you record it? How do you do that? Well, there are a couple of ways you can do that. First of all, And obviously with this, guys, any questions we'll talk about at the end. And also I'm quite happy to answer questions directly with me at a later time on LinkedIn or something. That's fine. So recording it, depending on what you use, you can use, if you're using your laptop, you can use a software called, and you've got a PC, you can use a software called Audacity. This is free. So it's absolutely free to use. It's Audacity or Audacity, whatever. I mean, it depends on how you pronounce the thing. This is really good for recording and editing. So this is if you want to put intros, outros, you can do that on Audacity. If you've got you can use that as well on a Mac, but if you have a Mac, GarageBand will absolutely do the exact same thing. But it doesn't do it on the iPad version or the phone version. You do need the laptop version. As I've discovered, Apple have kind of done us over with that. If you ever look, they've kind of removed a lot of the functions on the old one. So you have to have a laptop for that now. If you are going to use your phone, you can just use a dictation app. It's just the normal dictaphone app on your phone. It's absolutely fine. Now, if you are looking to do more of an interview session, or if you want to, you can use Zoom. Zoom is a really good way to record your interviews because it gives you a video and audio version of that. So if you decided that, and I'll talk about the formats and the type of podcasts you can have, but if you have decided that you want to create an interview podcast, then Zoom is brilliant because it will give you an audio version as long as you click record and you are the person hosting it. So that's a really, really good way of doing that. The other thing you can potentially do if you want to stream your podcast live to Facebook, there's another piece of software called StreamYard, which is really good as well. These are all free. So again, the paywall is not there at all. You've all got a phone. So it's literally, so that's how you can do that. Now hosting it. So what is hosting? Well, hosting a podcast is effectively, hosting is where you choose to house your podcast, where you choose to keep it. And then the hosting platform will then distribute. By the way, this all sounds way more complicated than it is when I'll break it down to you. Hosting is where you choose to house it, and then that host will distribute that podcast across the different platforms. So, for example, the Apple, Spotify, Google Play, they're the main three, but there are others as well. Now, you can choose to distribute it yourself. As a starter and as a beginner, I wouldn't recommend it. It's an absolute nightmare to do. That is a nightmare to do. So, use a hosting site is really good. Now, there are loads of different ways to host this. The one I recommend for all beginners, and it's the one that, and I use this one myself, is as a free app, and it is also a desktop version. The desktop version is better, but it allows you, if you want to make it purely off your phone with a voice note and upload, is an app called Anchor. Now, Anchor is free, and it is a free podcast hosting software. It is free because it's owned by Spotify, and Spotify are obviously using it to effectively, one, gather your data, let's be honest, and two, if they can get you hooked onto that, they have a kind of a chance of seeing what's doing well and what's not doing well, and then potentially bringing you on exclusively, like they have done with Joe Rogan. There's going to be lots of smaller deals that they're looking to do, and so they've effectively got like a talent pool. But the reason why I liked it was it was free. Now, you can have other paid methods. And I originally started my podcast on one called Buzzsprout. So Buzzsprout is a paid version, and it was £30 a month. Now, I quickly decided I could probably put that £30 a month to better use, realistically, and I did. I bought Mike when I first started, because I understand that the mindset behind it is, if you are, as the podcast grows and gets bigger, 100% you're probably going to want to move it away from Anchor. However, at the beginning, Anchor is definitely, you don't know if your podcast is going to blow up or pop, and how it does that can take a long time. And you don't want to be paying £30 a month for that. So that's something that you really don't want to do. So, got a message. Is that a message from you, Becca, or not? I don't know if I don't know how to see that.
I was just saying you've got about 10 minutes or your half hour.
Cool, perfect.
You're doing great.
No, that's cool. That's fine. I want to make sure. So that was the gear to get started. So what are the popular podcast formats? So everybody knows there's interview shows. Okay, that's the Joe Rogan one I talk about. But these are the 4 to talk about. So there's interview shows, conversational podcasts, which are more 2 people just chatting every single week. So the same people turning up every single week and talking about a specific topic. So this is something not to get confused with the interviews, which is a new guest every single week. Educational shows, which are more based purely on education and not entertainment. And then you have solo casts. So my podcast is more of a solo cast, which is me talking. To be fair, they kind of bridge over educational and solo cast. So some of these will cross over, but those are the 4 structures. So understanding which one you think your podcast should fit into is definitely going to help you establish it. Don't always jump to the interview show or the conversational one, because that is massively oversaturated. However, if you go down the educational or solo cast route, education, in my opinion, I will stress opinion, is one of the best underpriced places right now if you're trying to build a business. I'd get into the educational space. I'm going to make sure I'm going to go through these quicker for you because I've got a lot. So what is the perfect podcast? Well, the perfect podcast, it doesn't really exist, if I'm completely honest with you, but I did do a little bit of research into this for you guys, and then did a load of changes to my podcast after doing the research. So the ideal length of a podcast should be 22 minutes. It can be as long as you want or as short as you want, but it turns out that if you look at the top 25 podcasts in the podcast like place, apart from Joe Rogan's, which is like 2.5 hours long, it's around 22, 23 minutes. The reason why also is so TED Talks, it relates to that. I did some research at the end. TED Talks limits it at 18 minutes, stops people from getting bored. If you're doing an educational podcast, I would definitely keep it below 22 minutes because that's how you get them coming back. Best day to post a podcast. Well, I did some more research. I just kept looking at the top 25. The top 25 show that most of them are midweek. So for example, beginning to midweek, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Tuesday being the most favorite because the idea that I spoke to a couple of my podcasting friends, and the idea was people are busy on a Monday, but by Wednesday, they've got so much to do by the end of the week that it's hard for them to find time to consume it. So Tuesday seems to be the best time, and the best frequency is once a week. Now, again, second best of that was twice a week. So one of these people who do bi-weekly and monthly podcasts, I wouldn't recommend it. You want to become a weekly kind of part of their life. So I definitely recommend 22 minutes, 20 to 25 really, on a Tuesday, and do it once a week on a consistent topic. So here you have, guys, if you want, you can screenshot that or whatever, but this is just a real basic sample of a framework you can use for a educational based one. Also an interview, but this is really good for a short, I think it's about 20 minutes. I kind of built this one up, but it's a good framework there for you guys to work out exactly what you need to make it relevant, because you don't just want to get on and start talking, because you'll spiral off into Pluto. So that's the best way to do it, is have a proper format and structure. So I'm sure I'll let you have questions with that one. So how do you optimize it? This is pretty much the last slide for this, so you can get some more questions in. How do you optimize and promote your podcast? Well, this is where I love it, because this is what I do. So first of all, I'm going to talk about optimization. Picking a title. The name that you choose to name your podcast is really important. And it's not about finding a really cool creative name. I learned this the hard way. It's not about finding a cool creative name. It's about SEO, so which is search engine optimizing. What that means is if people are typing that in to look for that podcast, then they will find it. An example of that for me, and I'll use it as a pure example, is my podcast originally was called the Camera Shy Creative Podcast, which sounds absolutely beautiful, but means absolutely nothing. And the problem with that is people are not searching, I want like Camera Shy Creative, but they are searching personal branding. So when I put personal branding, and then I looked at one, in other words, and that's why I say before, it's one is in an SEO standpoint will rank it higher than any other number or any other letter. Personal branding 101. When I did that change and changed the title, it made it pop. My downloads went through the roof. And I did the same with everything else, with not so much my YouTube channel, that's terrible, but everything else, it just went through the roof. That's something to consider. If you are doing a podcast on like enterprise support, I'd literally call it the enterprise support podcast, or whatever. You know what I mean? I wouldn't overthink it. It's very, very, it's about searching it. As you get bigger and better, then yes, these cooler names could potentially be changed. But I mean, I joke about this. My friend who has 10,000 plus downloads a week on his podcast. His podcast is called the Lead Generation for Financial Services Podcast. That is its name, the dullest name in the world, but it goes through the roof because that's what people are searching for. So the other thing then with podcasts is it doesn't have a similar format yet, like YouTube or any other ranking systems. It's very hidden. So you need to funnel people to your podcast from all your social platforms. So that is TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, anything like that. Talk about your podcast and direct them to the podcast, because they're never going to find it otherwise, really, because unless you get into the top 10 ranked or top 25, most people are not going to find it. So you want to be really talking about it every single day, or putting it in your banners and talking about who you've got coming up next, what your topics are. Make it a regular part of your content strategy on your social media all the time. And if you're at networking events, talk about it at your networking events and have it on the back of your business card. Really like go to town with it. Once it's up and running, word of mouth will do most of the work. But you do need to, the key things, the two key tips are push it on every social platform and make sure the name is optimized so that someone would search that. And I think, risks, to be honest with you, because this is, you guys asked for the risks involved. I can't think of any risks other than, to be like I say, there's no real risk apart from going back to the regulated thing. It is unregulated right now, which means that some people can feel a little bit like they can say and do whatever they want. Be careful with it, because I think there's two risks. That one is that you be careful what you say and do, because it could get yourself in trouble if in the long run. You want to make sure that you're saying things that either you genuinely believe, and say like David Icke's caused a load of problems right now with all of this. You'll see it on the news with him. Similar thing. Just be careful what you say, and make sure that, because it's not regulated, it's something you want to be held accountable for the rest of your life, because people will pull it up. The internet's forever. And the other thing I would say is the risk involved is going off topic. Don't go off topic on your podcast. You'll lose your audience. So if your topic is purely around making buttons for jumpers, make sure it's always about making buttons for jumpers. It's not, you don't go off, because you will lose people, because that's all they're following you for. So any questions? And that's my podcast. So if you want to listen to it, I'm just a big old shameless plug there. That is my podcast there, if you want to download it.
Great. Okay. I'm just looking at the Q&A section, and they're coming in loads of them. So the first one is, how many episodes did you have in mind before you went live?
Okay. So I had a lot of episodes for me, because I was making content around this stuff before through videos. So I just effectively, and I wrote lots because of what I do. I've had a lot of blogs and all that stuff. However, so for me, I had about 20 episodes ready to go. If I'm honest, there's a couple of things you can do. Having 5 episodes, I would say, I would recommend having 4 to 5 episodes recorded, so that you're working in a monthly rolling kind of schedule. The reason why is you want to make sure you're ahead of the game. So if your week is busy or your month is busy, you're ready to go. However, I did a huge mistake when I launched mine, which is, like I said, I recorded like 20 episodes, and my name changed, my intro changed, my marketing changed, and I had to delete probably 17 of them. So I would recommend that as you're doing this and you're learning, I would probably recommend you stick to about 4, maybe 5 on a monthly rolling schedule.
Cool. Okay. There's a couple of questions about the content plan slide and whether we're going to be sharing this afterwards. So would you be able to quickly put that slide back up? Yeah. But also we are going to be sharing this on our YouTube. So don't worry too much if you've missed anything. It will all be going up on YouTube within the next week. So you can get it there. Okay. Yeah. I think in response to that previous question, why did you pivot and change?
Change to
So why did you pivot and change with them? You said you changed your title and intros.
Because of the optimization. So when you start a podcast, say everyone's going to be different. When I did mine, I did this similar thing. All of these, everything I'm telling you here on not to do is because I did it and it didn't work. I did this silly thing. I wanted a podcast. It was massively something close to my heart because of the way I wouldn't have been here now if I hadn't have got podcasts, because I was an actor before. I was never going to be, I didn't think of myself as an educated person until I started listening every day. And it changed my life. So when I started doing it, I started creating content in an interview format. And what I started to realize very quickly was that that was not the best way for me to pass my message on. My best way was, this is going to sound really big-headed, I interviewed a load of people and started realizing actually I knew more about it than they did, and actually it would be better doing a solo episode talking about giving you guys actionable points. So that's why I did a pivot. And then the reason why I pivoted the name was because of SEO. So I spent some time with a friend of mine who's a digital marketer, and he was like, you need to change the name. And I think that's something I would say to everyone is be prepared. Don't be too precious with it. Be happy to just change and evolve and adapt. It's now in a very good place. And it obviously is very much in a good place now. I think at the moment I've got about 17 episodes, but that's because I deleted a load because exactly the same reason I want to put it out there. So yeah, so that's that answered. I can go on forever otherwise.
Great. Okay. The next one is, how do you measure size of audience, and are the audience able to tell that there is no one listening?
This is the best thing about it. No, they're not. So unlike YouTube, now I make a choice. I video mine, all my podcasts, and then I rip the audio off of it, and then I upload it to YouTube. Just so if anyone, that's just completely off topic, but just so you know, you can do that. It just doubles up. But I don't promote YouTube. It's just there if someone ever Googled me and saw it. Now, measuring numbers. When I first started mine, so I started mine while it ramped up quickly once I put the SEO in part and then started doing talks. But when I first started, the numbers, when you try to judge it, it's really hard. If you get 5 or 6 people listen to your podcast in your first 3 months, that's really good. Like, that is really good, because you've got to think that these people it's not like a YouTube video. It's not about impressions. If you get a play, they have to listen to 75% of the whole thing. So a good one there, I'd say within about 3 months, I was averaging about 70 listens an episode. And then from there now it's some of my episodes are hitting 2,000, 3,000, but the thing to remember with it, it's not like YouTube downloads or YouTube views and things like that. It's very much individual people downloaded that podcast. So when my friend has like 10,000 downloads a week, that's like very big, as a big audience to have. So I think that's the way to do it. But people don't see those. And I will say, don't share that information with people. That's something that is really, really important not to do. It's a bit like, don't talk about money. Don't talk about the amount. I mean, I'm giving you averages, but I'm telling you kind of roughly, but you don't share that information publicly with people, because it's kind of an unspoken thing in the podcast world.
Great. Okay. The next one is, any tips to make podcasts engaging and interactive for the listeners? How can we initiate response from them?
Yeah, to make it engaging and entertaining, first one, be yourself, definitely, because if you try and pretend and try and do things, also remember, me from being an actor, it's about tonality. They can't see you, so what you say and how you do it. That's why these mics are amazing, because they're a bit like, I can't pronounce it, but it's like AMSR. You can get really close or you can go really far. So it adds a bit of personality. So be prepared that you've got to put a lot behind the way you talk, as opposed to your visual aspect doesn't help. So that's one way. Definitely, when you hear these people, you find them entertaining. The other thing I would definitely say with it is to make it engaging for people. Either it needs to be entertaining or educational. Now, if you don't, and as I said, like going back to the format, if it was, in my honest opinion, the entertaining one is very hard, because it's the one that everybody does. And so it's the one that everyone else is, because, and especially you're going to see it massively now with Joe Rogan because of what's happened. Everyone's going to keep doing it. If you want to make people engaged, give them something that's worth their time listening to, like an educated, 4 tips. So I do mine is like like what we're doing now is pretty much what I would do in a podcast in a much smaller version. Well, yeah, like this. So you could listen to it and go, this is what we do. This is how we do it. Do you know what I mean? And every week you could listen and get better and better. And that's the best way, I think, to get people to listen to you.
Great. Okay. We still have time if anybody wants to submit any more questions, but I have a few here just for the meantime. So I think probably a few people will be thinking about like monetizing podcasts. I know we've had a little discussion about this, but is podcast something that you can monetize, or how do you go about doing that?
So you can monetize a podcast. There's a lot of people who do make a lot of money doing it. I know this is what me and you spoke about. It's not, the path is not quite there yet. I refer this a lot to YouTube, to the streamers, to the gaming people. It's a similar kind of space. It's very new. So the monetization strategy is really with podcasting is endorsements. So sponsors and endorsement deals is what mostly happen. Now, Anchor does offer you an advertising, like an AdSense part. I would promise you don't do that. The AdSense thing on Anchor, because they talk about monetizing it. You make I think it's like you can make like $0.50 or whatever per 1,000 downloads. I mean, it's really not worth it, and they'll spam your podcast with ads. So you don't want to do that. However, the way to monetize it right now seems to be build up a big enough audience that you can then get products that relate to you and talk them through that. That's how most podcasters are making their money, and they're making full-time livings from it. Now with this Joe Rogan thing, I'm going to stress it again. I don't know what's going to happen in the next year to 2 years, because I think in my gut feeling tells me, if you look at what's happened with everything else, they've got the big fish, but they're going to go after some low-hanging fruit to do that. And over time, I think you probably find the next year or two, there'll definitely be more of a structured monetization platform. So you're better off building it now so you're ready to take advantage of that, I guess.
Great. Okay. The next one is, have you got any tips for reaching out to guest speakers when on a small budget?
Yeah. Don't ever pay a guest to go on your podcast. Well, depends. It depends. Don't pay a guest to go on your podcast because it's a huge boost for them. It's a massive boost for them to go on a podcast. So the way I would say it is, reach out to people who you want. You can reach out to your friends and family and things like that. But realistically, go after the guest you actually want. So if you are looking, go on. LinkedIn is the best for this. LinkedIn is incredible for this. That's where most of my stuff happens. But LinkedIn's brilliant because you can reach out to them 9 times out of 10. If you obviously don't go for like big stars and things like that, because they're going to just turn you away. But if you go to someone and go, look, I've been watching your content and I love it, I promise you, they'll be freaking out. That's what happened. I know when I got my first, someone approached me, it's about 3 years ago now, and they said, would you come on my podcast? I was like, oh my God, yes, definitely. Oh my God. Like and that's what people are going to do. They're not going to tell you that. And when I started to reach out to I had a couple of fitness influencers come onto mine. Got someone that got like 1 million subscribers and things like that. And I was like, would you do it? They're like, yeah, 100%. Because actually what you'll find is a lot of them don't understand podcasts because of this. 50% don't even know about it. So they've never done it before. And so you end up having the control. And the good thing with podcasts, the way that my friend said it, which was the one who's got the big downloads, he was saying that if you approach them, let them talk about their topic, and you get an hour of their time, 22 minutes of their time, to kind of get free consultation. So reach out to them and just collect the no's, but you won't get as many no's as you think.
Great. Okay. We do have a few more. So the next one is, how long does it take to build up a reasonable size of audience for your podcast?
For me, it took about 3 months. It took about 3 months to build that. Yeah, so I'd say 3 months, but all of it depends on how much you're optimizing it and outreaching it. So I make tons of content online. Like, so I do 1 to 2 videos on every social media platform a day. And so I started to get people to kind of transition across. But it took me about 3 months to get a decent enough download that you're like, when you put it out, you're going to get, double figures in the first 10 minutes, and then you're going to start getting, so I would say, yeah, about 3 months, but it can take a long time. And I wouldn't be disheartened if you don't get it, you get the numbers you want in the first 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. Joe Rogan, and I keep using him as an example because he's just literally the poster child. He's done it for 10 years. So he did it for 10 years, and that's how he got that. You have to start off, just keep going, and eventually people will find it. But Facebook, friends, family, get it shared everywhere, and it will work.
Great. Okay. This is meant to finish in the next few minutes, but we do still have quite a few questions coming in. So
I'm happy. Don't worry. It's up to you. As long as you guys. But I'm happy. I've got a client at 2, so I'm contact with you until you.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll just get through these last ones. Like I said, it's all going up on the YouTube, so it's all useful. If you're not able to stay live now, everybody who's watching, they can come back and watch it on YouTube. So the next one is in reference to this framework that you have up.
Yeah.
So do you have 4 topics there? Are they all related to the main subject, or are they separate topics?
So they're all related to the main subject. So without going too much into like content marketing, content pillars, a content pillar is what you choose to talk about. So for example, with me, it's personal branding. So I would, for example, talk about, so it might be make a podcast. Topic 1 might be so within personal branding. Topic 1 could be like what is a podcast. Topic 2, how did it rise to popularity? Literally the format we did here. Topic 3, how do I start it? Topic 4, how do I optimize it? That's how. So I would say do it within one topic, and then they're just subtopics within that. For this format, these 3 minutes. Or for example, no one does this. Actually, there's one person I know who does this, a social media podcast, where they just do 3 or 4 little tips. So it's just like a weekly, here's a little tip, blah, blah, blah. And they're just very small throwaway stuff. But for 22 minutes, I'd probably focus on one specific topic and go deeper into that topic. And a good framework I haven't put on here, but the good way that I like to do it with a lot of people, this is what I deal with my clients with, is follow it's a why, how, and what. So why, how, what. If you follow why it's relevant, how does that work, and what does that mean to the people who you're listening to? If you follow that on every single topic, on every single kind of episode, and then that will give you 3 to 4 topics quite easily.
Great. Okay. And then a follow-up from that question, again with this framework, how important is it to have a music jingle unique to you, or do you need a unique slogan?
Not massively important enough to stop you from making a podcast. So I'll first of all say it's not, you can learn as you're going. Do you know what I mean? You learn as you're going. However, as time goes on, I'll make sure I don't say it because Alexa's in the corner, but with the rise of Alexa, with the rise of voice automated stuff, and with the rise of podcasts, because everything is audio, then having a jingle, having a noise that's relevant to your brand that you're building within that is really powerful, because it's effectively going to become your logo. You know what I mean? So I have on my logos and stuff is a clapperboard. So I have a clapperboard that goes bang, and then it makes like a noise. I have that on every single piece of content that I have. Now there's a visual representation of it, but there's also a audio one. So people who've seen it enough on my content, when they hear that, they're already seeing the logo, they're seeing the clap, and that's really powerful. And that's where you think about, like, is it like the Dell where it goes ding, 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 like all of these, like when you think about that, when you build your podcast, trying to build this really recognizable sound is very powerful. But it's not something that I would be fixated on right now. I mean, like I said, I've only literally, I went and paid and got mine made about 3 months ago, I think maybe 4 months ago. I paid someone to get it done. So it's unique. So yeah.
Okay, and kind of following on from that one, actually, there's another question asking, like, I guess you've almost answered it, but how do you actually go about making this intro and outro music?
So you can make it on anywhere you want. You can use. I had paid someone to do mine in the end, but I made one originally using. Again, I've done a lot of refining on my kind of brand, so that's why now I didn't have the budget when I set it up. Now the business is up and running and really working. I'm paying the people who I know can do it. But at the beginning, I just used Video Leap and I used sound effects, and I created, if you or you got iMovie, something like that. There's a load of sound effects in those things. They don't have copyright on them. They're absolutely usable. Using the sound effect itself, it's not going to be recognizable, but when you use it. So, for example, my business before this, I was in financial services, and I was a mortgage broker, and I used for my videos for that, I used the sound of a doorbell, and then I used the sound of a door shutting. I just took that from iMovie and just layered them together, and then put an image so it looked like when it shut, the whole thing shut. So if someone shut the door on it, that then was on all of my audio content. So just had this boom, and then people over time would understand that's what that is. So anything, if you use it enough consistently, people will start to recognize it with you.
Perfect. Okay. Got just 3 more questions.
That's
so
cool.
the next one is, how do you stand out and set yourself apart from everyone else who is doing this?
Be you. That's the cheesy way of saying it, but it's true. Literally, this is what I do, is be you. Don't try, and my biggest thing I see, don't try and copy so this thing of success leaves clues is very true. Take a framework of what you like. So if you like interview, podcast, educate, whatever it is, pick a range of things that you like. And the way I call it like a triangle. So pick 3 things you like. It's like one here, one here, one here. And then you become the middle. What is it that all those 3 that you like? So if it's, for example, you like this for business, you like this for the kind of spontaneity, and then you like this for the kind of the relaxed vibe, these 3 different podcasts, try and find that middle ground, and that's you, and that's an authentic place then. What I would say you don't do, and this is, again, I learned this from a very good marketing guy, was said, don't try and just copy what you see other people do, because you don't know why they've done it. You know what they've done, and you may know how they've done it, but you don't know why. And because you don't know why, it can fall short. So the biggest thing is, and I joke about this all the time, the clapperboard is my thing, because I was an actor. I'm not today because we're in a presentation, but normally, so I'm covered in tattoos. I have a big beard and long hair. That it's all tied back, but that's my image, and I'm massively unashamed is his word, like unapologetically put that on all my content. And that is what has made me stand out in every industry I've done. That's what has made me stand out, is that you're so public about who you are. So I wouldn't hide behind a put your face on it, is what I'm trying to say. And that's how you'll stand out.
Great. Okay. The next one I just have here texted to me. So it's, how do you decide on what content you will talk about? Is it based on personal experience or research, or is it based on some sort of demand?
Do you know what? It's all 3, actually. That's a really good. I'm gonna have to nick whoever sent you that. I'm gonna have to nick that and use that as a podcast episode, because I like that. It's based on all 3. You can use a website called Ask the Public. I know you've heard of that before. So www.askthepublic.com. It's like it's like SEO Rush, but it's free. So in other words, it gives you all the Google searched terms. So like with me, I search like personal branding, and then it brings up like thousands of terms that have been searched. So it might be personal branding for LinkedIn, personal branding versus corporate branding. And I use those as my headers for topics. Now, I'll tell you why I use those. Because I upload it to YouTube, I've only literally started last 3 episodes because I thought, sod it, once I'll may as well double up on it. That YouTube is linked to Google, and Google will rank those in an SEO purpose. So putting in the titles are really important. But I would say that SEO, Ask the Public is very good to find that, but find a sub niche topic that you know and you're passionate about, and then talk about the topics that come up on that Ask the Public. That's a really basic, good way of, when I work with clients who set up podcasts, it's a really easy way to start, because then you just look at it and go, okay, cool. You can look at, don't be afraid to like go and look for blogs and talk about those blogs. This is really popular. You don't need to make original content. So as long as you talk about the fact that you've read this blog and give credit to the blog you've read, you can talk about that. Do you know what I mean? That's actually what a lot of them do. So I might listen to one and go, and Mike Kim is one of the leading personal branding experts in the world. I listen to his podcast. Some of my episodes talk about what I got from listening to his podcast. What he said this, and I love this. But as long as you give him credit, it boosts their podcast, it boosts your podcast, and so that's something that's quite good to do. Is search, so use Google to search blogs and things. And the good thing with blogs is they're usually broken down into 6 tips, 7 tips. So you can talk about each tip individually.
Great. Okay, I have one last question from me, and then I think we'll close this one. So I've had a little look on Anchor, and it suggests making like a little pilot episode or an intro episode. What do you think are the main things you need to do here, and do you think that is something that you should do?
Yeah, so you need to actually, you need to do that anyway. So you need to do that because of distribution reasons. So the Spotify, and so the big guys like Spotify and Apple, I think Google Play maybe, I don't know if Google Play does, but you need to have one episode for them to authorize it. And that's what that feature is about. So having like a really, like, to be honest with you, when I did mine, it was literally just me going testing 1, 2, and I literally recorded it and then I submitted it. And it can take like 2 or 3 weeks to get that authorized, because Apple, these guys, and because of the Ofcom regulation, it's not regulated, but they are checking what it is you're talking about. And because of that, I would only use those trailers for that reason. It's going to sound really bad. It's kind of a sign of noticing if someone's a bit amateur if they've got a trailer. Whether that changes, I don't know. It might change in the past. It might be that actually people do. But if you look at these big podcasts, they don't have trailers. So it's only Anchor that actually offers it. So it's very obvious that it's an Anchor thing. So you quite quickly go, that guy's using the free platform. So I would personally say do a little video, a little recording. You can literally just, hi, this is the blah, blah, blah podcast. Look, excited for it to go live. No one will see it. No one will see it because it's not like social media. You're not alerted to new episodes. You will have had no subscribers. You just need it to be authorized, at which point delete it and then start your proper schedule.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we should probably look to wrap this one up now, but
yeah, it's cool.
I think we've had really good engagement there. Lots of really exciting questions. And I think just from the work chat here, everybody's logging off now to go and start their own podcast. So I think you've definitely made an impact. So thank you so much to everybody who's joined us. And thank you, Ash, as well, for hosting this great session. And we do have loads of other webinars going on. So keep an eye on all of our social media. Head to our website. We've got all of the information there. But yeah, for today, that's it. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you.